All right, Dr. Tommy, you've spoken a great deal on capital resources or building capital base in Nigeria. Let's look at employment right now. There's a high level of unemployment in the country, and there seems to be a lot of cry by the Nigerian public that things are not being done on merit basis. We look at Nigeria and there's this thing called federal character and all of that. What do you think this is a clog in the wheel of getting the right people in the right positions at the right time?
There's no question in my mind that if you want to get things done well, you use merit. The problem that people don't seem to have a good handle of is how, if you use merit, you take care of everybody. Now, that is a deliberately created myth because if you give me the assignment, I can find somebody who merits a position from every part of Nigeria.
Doc, break that down. How do you mean merit? Just break it down.
Merit, okay, let's take a sport that you are familiar with, football. If we are going out to the Nations Cup, do we go around looking for who is from where so that we can have a team? No, you go and find the best footballers that exist anywhere in the world who are Nigerian by birth. And you know what? Usually turns out they come from a broad distribution of Nigeria. We have all kinds of names from all parts of the country who are on that national team. So we can find Nigerians who are eminently qualified, competent enough to hold down those and who are picked on merit. If I want to play the academic that I am, I will tell you that many years ago, there was a guy called Thomas Kingsley who wrote a book on representative bureaucracy. And he makes the point that you find the right guys distributed from different places, they represent better in the bureaucracy and government is more effective. So the idea of federal character is not one that is dismissed, but the problem is that when it's nepotism, rather than ensuring that the most competent people of merit are brought into the system, that's where the abuse comes from, that nepotism.
How can Nigeria ensure this that you've just said? How can we ensure that the right people are gotten in? What does the government need to do?
By laying down very clear criteria for every position. And once people meet those criteria, you pick from the best of the best.
Sir, I'm just going to ask your opinion now. A lot has been said about corruption. A lot has been said on the resources and the powers that have been given to political holders. There seems to be a disjoint in terms of how leaders spend this money that they receive from the federal government. What do you think? Do you think that this is the major problem that Nigeria is facing? Is it
the real problem, I think, is the absence of vertical accountability. Let me explain this. You know, many times when we want to check corruption, we set up institutions, EFCC, ICPC, and all of those. They're wonderful. But these are institutions of horizontal accountability. And somebody orders somebody to do something. Horizontal accountability, the people hold you accountable. That means that as a public officer, you're holding stakeholder town hall meetings. These are people who have a stake and know about that and can ask you questions. They know how much it costs to build a road in Kenya, in Canada, and they will say to you, a road from here to there costs so much. This is the nature of the terrain. And this is what it costs in Ireland. This is what it costs in Ghana. Why has it cost us 10 times as much here? Look, there's evidence from around us that it's possible to reduce and almost eliminate corruption. Many years ago, again, I'm going to put on the teacher hat. You know, I can't get away from the fact that I'm a lifelong teacher.
And we wouldn't want to.
You know, and there's a book that was written on corruption and development in Africa by a gentleman called Bonwell Hope and Chukulo, you know. And the book basically opens with a statement on corruption. It says that corruption runs the spectrum in Africa from rare in Botswana to widespread in Ghana and systemic in Nigeria.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
if it can be rare in Botswana, why can't it be rare in Nigeria? And so if we do the right things, we can manage to make corruption rare in Nigeria.
Doctor, you've just made a very serious point. You've said corruption is rare in Botswana. Botswana is an African country. Why can't corruption be rare in Nigeria?
It is rare in Botswana because the government of Botswana spends tax dollars, and its people, being active and involved citizens, hold the government to account. Even the bureaucracy, the way a civil servant engages a minister. I mean, I was at a conference in the UK years ago. There was a minister from Botswana who actually became vice president, who was there. He used to ride the bus to come to the conference. And of course, the Nigerian ministers came in long motorcades. Why do they behave differently? One is spending money that just dropped from the sky, as it were, oil money. The other is spending taxpayers' money for which he has to be held to account. What's even interesting, more interesting, is that Botswana is not without natural resources. In fact, as a major diamond exporter, Botswana was one of the fastest growing economies in the world for many, many years. But guess what? They save most of that money in a future fund. They just don't spend that. Indeed, when I made a proposal years ago about how Nigeria's oil revenues should be managed, my position was that we should have 3 different accounts. One account, which goes into the distributable pool fund, as we call it today, the FAC account, should be no more than $40, $50 a barrel of crude. The National Assembly wants to go to 80 something. No more than 40 or 50. And let people pay taxes, and you run based on that. From about 50 up to about 80 should go to a stabilization fund, a fund that you can draw on when there is an emergency, when you need to then shore up the budget. And then from that up to a future fund, saved for the future, invested only in long-term things that will bring gains to the future. I mean, just think of it. Why is it that in Nigeria, the only group that took up arms on the matter of oil money were those who bear the brunt of oil exploration? And those others for whom it's just a windfall from the sky don't understand what you're talking about, but these people feel
pain.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we need to be really, really mindful of these things when we think budgeting.
Doctor, talking about government spending and accountability, Nigeria seems to spend 72% on its recurrent expenditure and spends only 28% on its capital expenditure. How can we turn this around? There seems to be something wrong going on there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, in a country with a huge infrastructure deficit, and every time you do a private sector assessment of Nigeria, people tell you real growth that is sustainable cannot take place with all of these infrastructure problems and all of these challenges to the private sector, power, and so on and so forth. And we are spending so much on recurrent expenditure instead of on capital expenditure. That is frightening. But to make matters even worse, the statistics that you give us are typical statistics offered by government as appalling, but it's even much, much worse. I mean, a few years ago, the Minister of Finance even herself complained that, wait a minute, that year she said it was 82% recurrent. And at the end of that year, a number of us did an analysis of what actually happened. It turned out that what was spent on recurrent was actually 96%. Almost everything that went to capital expenditure was borrowed. So we are in really troubling times. But what is even more galling is the fact that some of the things that we spend this recurrent money on are frightening, like pilgrimages. And this is all over the country. Christian, Muslim. A state that I know of that can't even fund education really spends incredible amounts of money sending people on pilgrimages. Now, I have some familiarity with both the Bible and the Quran, and I know that both suggest that a pilgrimage is a thing of sacrifice.
Yeah, element of sacrifice.
Now, if it turns out that you not only get it paid for, but get paid almost to go on Where is the religious element? And Mahatma Gandhi makes a very profound statement. One of his deadly social sins is religion without sacrifice. For Gandhi, that is a deadly social sin. And here we are, religion without the sacrifice of the pilgrimage, damaging the budget process and taking away from prospects that we can create human capital, for example, by investing in education. These are the kinds of practices that must stop if we're going to make progress in Nigeria.
Wow. Doctor, you've made some very enlightening points, and you've said a lot of things that have hit home. But I'm going to bring this closer to you now. Let's talk about your political career. I mean, over the past elections in Nigeria, we've seen you've come out, you've stood your ground, and you've said what you believe for, what you stand for and what you believe. Are you going to be in the 2015 elections?
Well, leaders should be driven by principles. Leaders should be driven by commitment to service. As one who has always aspired to show the light wherever I am found, I think that the need to give service to the Nigerian people, to turn around an economy that's aching, to ensure that the citizen ultimately becomes the focus of government, it would be inappropriate for me not to step into an opportunity to help shape the future. So once that opportunity exists, one has a duty, an obligation to step forward to try and make a difference in the lives of people, because that's really all that matters, how you are remembered in the hearts of people because of the commitment that you have shown to make a true difference in their lives.
Wow. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Thank you so much.
Great pleasure.
Can I say, Doctor, it has been enlightening and it has been an honour. Thank you very much.
Great pleasure indeed. Great pleasure.
Thank you very much for joining us. Unfortunately, that's all we can take on this edition. But please do log on to our website on nigerpundits.com. You can leave comments about the show and let us know what you think about what we're doing here. Follow us on Twitter as well as on Facebook. Till we come your way again on another edition, have a lovely week and happy independence. Take care.